Assalamualaikum to Dr. Nur Saibah and Dr. Nur Hidayah. My name is Hanis Suraya Binti Isa. Today, I would like to present my final year project 2 with the topic The Acceptance of Electronic Performance Monitoring Towards Job Employee Performance in Service Industry. For the background of the study, let's see the definition of the monitoring. Monitoring or surveillance in the workplace is not novelty because that can be noticeable. Next, restriction of access for employer for particular links and do monitoring employee action is limited. With the old traditional ways that they apply in the organization are not too efficient, and EPM is as a tool for employer to the surveillance anytime, anywhere, to the employee, and this is the efficient and the easiest way for manager or employer to surveillance them. And the researcher also see that with the current issue, which is COVID-19, and EPM is actually good for employer to use EPM as a tool which the employee work from home. For the problem statements, there are two, which is involve performance of employee, which the time used is for personal matter and give impact for the organization. And the second one is the behavior of employee, such as extended lunch period, abuse sick leave, tourism, absenteeism, and many activities that employee do in the organization. For the research question and research objective, there are three. The first one is what are the factors influence employee acceptance electronic performance monitoring in service industry. Second one is what are the relationship between electronic performance monitoring in service industry and job employee performance. And the last one of the research question is what are the most significant factors that influence acceptance of electronic performance monitoring in service industry. For answering these research questions is a research objective, which is the first one is to identify the factors influence employee acceptance of electronic performance monitoring in service industry, and the second one to examine the relationship between electronic performance monitoring in service industry and job employee performance, and the last one is to determine the most significant factor that influence employee acceptance of electronic performance monitoring in service industry. Let's move to chapter 2. There are two variables that researchers found, which is dependent variables and independent variables. For the dependent variables is the acceptance of electronic performance monitoring. Meanwhile, for independence, there are four variables, which is privacy challenges, trust, attitude concern, and functionality of monitoring. Next, for framework, there are two types of framework in this research, which is the researcher use a conceptual frameworks, and the second one is the theoretical framework. Let's move to chapter 3. In this chapter 3, research design that apply in this research is explanatory. The choices or the methodology that researchers use is the quantitative rather than the qualitative, because that is easy to do in this research. The third one is the research strategy, which the researcher used to use the questionnaire and the survey form, which is just the online one, to distribute the questionnaire to the respondent. For the sampling technique, the researcher used the simple random sampling and distribute the questionnaire to the 181 respondents. Let's move to chapter 4. In this section, several tests was tested in this research. For the first one is the pilot test. For the pilot test, the researcher took 15 respondents to test the questionnaire that already structured in the survey. And as the result, the compact alpha is 0.869, which n item is 20. And the result show the strong correlation on the compact alpha. For the variables also, as we can see, the compact alpha is not too strong, which is from 0.568 on the attitude concerns and 0.6 and above for the another variables, which is privacy challenges, trust, and functionality of the monitoring. For demographic analysis, there are 5 items that in this demographic section. The first one is the race. As we can see, the highest percentage of this demographic race is Malay. The lowest one, which is Indian and other races, which having a same percentage. For the next demographic is gender. Between males and females, females are leading in this section. For the third is education level. As we can see, there are categories in education level. From the PMR or PT3, and the highest one is PhD. The highest percentage that researcher found is having bachelor degree rather than other education level. Next is service industry, where service industry the respondent work for. We can see the highest percentage is others industry, means there are not listed in this service industry that the researcher lists in the questionnaire. And the last one is the years of working for the respondent works in the organization. The highest one is the respondent work as a manager in less for 5 years. Next, research question analysis. For dependent variables, the highest standard deviation is 0.729, which is question number 3. Given that EPM can reduce unfair treatment in the organization, so the managers predict that he or she will use it. Meanwhile, for the lowest standard deviation belongs to question number 4 with 0.681. Given EPM will not release a private data, the managers intend to use it. For the mean, the highest is 4.35 belongs to question number 4, and the lowest mean is 4.29 belongs to question number 3. For the independent variables, for the first is a privacy challenge. Highest standard deviation for privacy challenges is 0.979, which is the question number 4. My privacy has been narrowed to allow better monitoring. The second highest standard deviation is 0.848, which the question number 1, it is acceptable that task accomplishment is monitored on a personal level. The lowest for privacy challenges is 0.794 standard deviation, which the manager accepts the personal monitoring for the task in order to encourage transparency in assessment. For the mean, the highest mean is 4.25, which is question number 3. It is necessary for the supervisor to monitor the task accomplishment on the individual level. And the lowest mean, which is 3.59 on the question number 4. The second variable is trust. The highest standard deviation is 0.755, which question number 3, the job gives the manager considerable opportunity for independence in how he or she do the work. The second highest is 0.727 standard deviation to question number 2. The job gives the manager a chance to use the personal initiative or judgment in carrying out the work. And the lowest standard deviation leads to 0.590 to question number 1, which is loyalty and sense of moral obligations are important. For the third variables, which is attitude concern, the highest standard deviation is 0.984, which is question number 2, the way the company monitors the task accomplishment is fair. And the second highest of standard deviation is 0.936, which question number 4, the managers working in highly automated work. And the lowest standard deviation is 0.673, the managers satisfied with the important aspect for the job. For the mean, the highest mean is 4.35 on the question number 1 as well. And the second highest is 4.31, which to question number 3, the managers think it is fair for the supervisor is able to follow the task accomplishment during a work day. And the lowest mean that found in these variables is 3.95 on the question number 2. And last one for the independent variables is functionality of the monitoring. The highest standard deviation is 0.835 on question number 3. If the manager uses the system, he or she will increase the chances of getting a raise. And the second highest of the standard deviation is 0.787 on the question number 4. The manager will find the system is useful in his or her job. And the lowest of the standard deviation is 0.753 on the question number 2. Using the system increase the manager's productivity. For the mean, the highest mean is 4.41, which also the question number 2. The second highest is the 4.33, will lead to question number 1. By using the system, it's enable for managers to accomplish tasks more quickly. And the last one, the lowest mean is 4.17, which lead to question number 3. Next is reliability analysis. In this reliability analysis, the researcher tests on the 181 respondents to n item is 20. As the result, the combined alpha is 0.905. Based on the result, this amount is high reliability because the amount between 0.70 to 0.90 is high reliability, and the research on reliability analysis is 0.905. So the reliability is high compared to the pilot analysis that on the previous slide. Next, for Pearson correlation analysis, which to see the relationship between independent variables and dependent variables. For the first, we can see the first independent variables is privacy challenges. The relationship between these variables and dependent variables is 0.465, which is having a strong positive correlation. The next one is trust. The correlation between trust and dependent variables is 0.498, which having a strong positive correlation. Third variables is attitude constant. The correlation between these variables and dependent variables is 0.489, also having the strong positive. And the last one, functionality of monitoring, also having a strong positive correlation, which having 0.518. Overall, all dependent variables have strong positive correlation with the dependent variables, which is the acceptance of electronic performance monitoring. Next, for multiple regression analysis, the first is model summary. Model summary stated that R value is 0.616, and for the R square is 0.379, and the adjusted for the R square is value 0.365. For the ANOVA, the regression, the value of sum square is 23.157, which the mean square is 5.789. The residual, the sum of square is 37.909, which the mean square is 0.215. The significance of the ANOVA is 0.000. Next, for the coefficient correlation, as we can see, the 4 independent variables in this coefficient correlation is to see whether the variables are significant or not. Privacy challenges are not significant value which exceed the probability value is 0.05. For the privacy challenges, the value is 0.58. Meanwhile, the another 3 variables, which is trust, attitude constant, and functionality of monitoring, having below 0.05 probability value, which significant value is 0.09, 0.046, and 0.01. Next, we can see the hypothesis testing. As variables, the researcher accept the null hypothesis and reject alternative hypothesis because of there are no significant value between privacy challenges and the acceptance of electronic performance monitoring. The value of the variables is exceed 0.05, which is 0.058. The second one is trust factor variable. The researcher accept the alternative hypothesis and reject the null hypothesis. This is because the significant levels is lower than 0.05, which the significant levels is 0.009. Is attitude constant. Also accept the alternative hypothesis and reject the null hypothesis. This is because this factor also having low probability significant value, which having 0.46. Last one, for the hypothesis testing, the functionality of monitoring factor. The researcher accept the alternative hypothesis and reject the null hypothesis due to the significant level is lower than 0.05 and the significant level for this factor is 0.001. In last chapter, which is chapter 5, in this session, there are summary of findings, which is to answer whether the research objective achieved or not. For the first research objective, there are only the factors which are not answered the research objective. Meanwhile, for the another 3 factors are answered the research objective. The next one is research objective number 2. We can see is all the factors are answered the research objective. Mean is all independent variables have a correlation with dependent variables. And last one is research objective number 3. The most significant factors that influence the employee acceptance of electronic performance monitoring is the functionality of monitoring factor. This factor is having lower than 0.05 probability levels. So this factor have the most significant instead of others factors. Next, let's talk about the contribution. EPM is suitable for service industry to monitor, evaluate, and decide based on the proven, which can view by using any technological device. It can change the method from the traditional way to the technological way. And last one for the contribution is get the smooth evaluation process for the employee. Next is a limitation. The researcher having this limitation by distribute the questionnaire to the respondent with the targeted amount based on the sample size table. The researcher only having one respondent instead of the targeted amount the researcher wants, which is 365 respondent. Next is the respondent did not much understand the terms and poor to answer the question in English language. Researcher needs to do dual language. And the last one for the limitation is not cover the whole states of the Malaysia. This research only covered the Kuala Lumpur and Malacca areas. For the recommendation, the researcher wants to carry out much states in Malaysia. May not only Kuala Lumpur and Malacca. Second one is wants to spread this device EPM system for another industry, not only service industry such as primary and secondary industry. Even though they have certain limitation on both of these industry, but the researcher believe on future study, EPM also used in primary and secondary industry. And the last one is to enlarge the targeted respondent and to get view from another position in the organization. In the conclusion, problem that discussed in chapter 1 was defined and come out with the inference result at data analysis chapter. The research question and research objective also was done to be answered. The researcher also insert some implication and recommendation for the future study. Last one is the researcher hopes there will be more knowledge for conducting the research, the acceptance of electronic performance monitoring towards job employee performance. That's all from me. Thank you.